Welcome back into the Mental Game. I'm your host, Brandon Saho, and this week's guest is Asher Grodman, who plays Trevor on CBS's hit comedy Ghosts, and I can't wait to share this amazing conversation with you because Asher really dives into his own mental health, battling depression and suicidal thoughts. This goes really, really deep, and I can't thank him enough for opening up here on the Mental Game. We talk about his dreams, his career in acting, the ups and downs, struggling for years and years before finally landing this dream job on the show Ghost. We'll get into all of that and much, much more coming up in this episode. But once again, I want to remind all of you at home watching and listening, if you love the Mental Game and want to help more people, as many as you can, with their mental health, please like, subscribe, rate, review, share, tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, because I truly believe this can be a powerful platform that can help save lives with conversations. Speaking of conversations, now it is time for the next one here on the Mental Game with Asher Grodman. Welcome back into the Mental Game. As you can tell, I'm joined by a very special guest, Asher Grodman, here in New York City. I appreciate you coming on, man.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. Most people know you as Trevor in Ghosts, which is on CBS, a great show that I was told by my brother because I was at the games during the Bengals playoff run this past year, but those were the most, they had the most commercials during the Super Bowl run was you with
Is that
Ghost.
right?
Yeah, that's what I was told. So,
Oh, my God. I didn't know that.
My brother's a fan of the show, and he knew exactly who you were, so he's very happy to have you on here. First thing I ask everyone is, what does mental health mean to you? And people can answer it a variation of ways, whether it's something you discovered at a young age, or maybe there's a traumatic event that led to you maybe taking better care of your mental health. But I'll ask the question, what does mental health mean to you?
Oh, God. Am I going to get emotional right now? I think mental health is, it's funny. I spend so much time in therapy and trying to take care of myself, and I even still feel like, for the most part, I'm neglecting my mental health. And so I think it's your best way, or I'll speak for me, it's my best way to see myself. And I think that the thing is, if you're not seeing yourself, no one else has the time.
Yeah. That's true, and you have to realize what is good for you, what's bad for you, when to take care of yourself. Because I know, especially in the line of work that you're in, or what I used to do, being a sports reporter, it's so go all the time that you often don't have time, or don't think you have time to take care of yourself.
Well, I also there's as an actor, there's so many times that because for a significant portion of your career, you're probably jobless.
Yeah,
and so there is oddly time. But there's no priority on yourself because everything that you think you're trying to achieve is outside of yourself. And what's even worse is that it usually involves someone else's opinion about you. Yeah. Which, of course, is like the worst thing for your mental health. Sure. When you're trying. It's not like, I say this to my students, it's not like building a table where at the end of it you're like, oh, I built the table well. Yeah. Everything is subjective. You could feel great about your audition. Someone else can be like, oh, that sucked.
Right.
So...
Did you always want to be an actor? When did that become your goal, your dream?
No, I didn't. I think my parents thought that I was going to be like an architect or something, because I was always building things, and I grew up
like tables.
Like tables, yeah. No, I wasn't. I was like, I would build like little forts out of paper and stuff like that, and I was very like
it's creative.
Yeah, it was. It was creative, and I think that I was a really like shy kid. I was like deathly shy. And I've told this story a bunch, but basically I was really shy, had lacked, I guess, any social skills, or at least was just not seen as the normal. Yeah. And I was like the Jewish kid in an area where that wasn't normal. Right. And I had a crush on every girl in school, and I eventually ended up getting up in front of everyone and singing I was in the jazz band, and
Let's go.
Yeah, I was in the jazz, but I was really, very bad. And then everyone graduated, and suddenly I had to do things. And we did Brown Eyed Girl, and I got up, and I don't know how. Because I think movies were teaching me about social interaction, so I thought it'd be a good idea to get up in front of the entire school and change the lyrics from Brown Eyed Girl to Hazel Eyed Girl for this girl.
Did it work?
No, she was mortified.
Oh, okay.
But there was something about that.
I got zero game right now, so I'm maybe taking some.
Well, maybe as you get older, that strategy works a little more. But for a seventh grader, it didn't work. But what it did do was I had this this experience of suddenly being part of something, or I guess being seen.
Yeah,
is probably a better way to put it. That I've never quite put it together. Of like, oh, suddenly I existed in other people's eyes, and I felt like I wasn't so alone. Mm-hmm. And I think that somewhere in that was the beginning of pulling my imagination into real life, and the way to do that is always storytelling.
Do you feel like in your childhood, and we were talking a little bit before off camera about how you grew up in rural New Jersey, very opposite of where we're at now in the heart of New York City. Uh-huh. Do you feel like growing up you had that like maybe insecurity or anxiety about feeling alone or not seen or not heard just because you were such a shy kid?
I think there's a few things. I think that's part of it. I also think that, you're obviously influenced by your parents. And my parents are really, they've achieved a lot. They're really smart people. Mm-hmm. But like, we weren't like having people over. We weren't. It wasn't like a social space, and so I think that was something that wasn't modeled for me. Yeah. And then in addition, I struggled so much in school, socially and academically. I'm dyslexic. I had ADD. My tests were horrible. Yeah. And so I don't know this, but I am sure that somewhere in my body is the devastating fear of seeing my parents suddenly be afraid that I was gonna flunk out or something. Right. And you just start, and suddenly when you feel your parents are afraid, you're very afraid because that's disorienting. So
you sung Hazel Eyed Girl in 7th grade. Uh-huh. Going into high school, did that kind of flip the switch of, hey, I think I want to do this acting thing or get into theater in high school or do plays?
Yeah, I think there was, well, so, and this is what my parents did so incredibly well, and I got so lucky with, is that they never said you need to do X, Y, Z. It was always you do whatever you want. Yep. But when you do that thing, you better bust your ass and chase it. So when I figured out that this is the thing that I wanted to do, and I figured it out 14 or 15, whenever that was, my parents were all on board about helping me get out there. And so, I think my parents more than anything gave me a sense of tenacity. Okay. Yeah. That's
a very good trait to have. And my parents were the same way with being supportive. And I'm sure, I don't know if as much as acting, but
journalism is no joke.
It's very selective, very hard to break in. And it is grueling for, like you talked about, you don't have jobs for a while. You're not making a ton of money. Yeah. And so
and it's very similar in the fact that you don't control your own time. You're constantly chasing other people for these bits and stuff like that. I mean, you're no story is ever like, no, let me sit around and wait till he's ready.
Right. No, it'll be 7 a.m. when I'm hungover on a vacation day, and some Bengals player, NFL player will have some big contract signing or something like that. That's how it works. You came to New York City for college, right?
Yes. I mean, but I was always like, New York was the kind of the center of the world that I was in. Right. So I was coming around. I was in New York for a bit, auditioning and everything. But yes, college was the first time that I lived here. And
did you fall in love with it right away because you wanted to be you living in Jersey? I'm sure you're close enough to New York City where you had this idea of what being an actor and living in New York City was. When you came here and lived here for the first time, did that change you? Did it motivate you? How did it affect you?
I think I was, as with most things that I've done in my life, I think I was terrified at first.
Yeah.
Like I remember as a kid, I wouldn't want to come into the city. It was big and loud and scary, and I wanted to just go hide in the woods and and play with the dogs, and but And my relationship to the city was so defined by rejection through acting, and like my
Right.
parents driving me to go someplace in a room with a bunch of adults who would look at you like, you know, you're one of a million, and it's like next, and just there's no
Right.
humanity in there, and there was no one was preparing me for that. Except just the experience of doing it.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, it was really scary, and then when I got into New York, I think the first thing that happened to me living here was the city began to become my home.
Yeah.
Instead of a place that was this otherworldly place that had the things I wanted, but it was never going to give them to me.
Yeah, and you talk about auditioning, and I know we're going back and forth between our careers. We have like, you know, you put together your resume reel, you send it out, and then you basically go audition and do like a mock report, newscast, sportscast, whatever it is. But there is a lot of rejection. You talked about earlier, just the judgment of things that you can't control, like what you look like, what you sound like, how you read something, how you deliver a script. The rejections, and obviously like you're getting to live your dream now, but it is fairly recent, big time success. I mean, when did you get the part on Ghost?
I got the part in late February of 2020, and I was in LA to shoot the pilot. And just a pilot is just gonna make one episode, and
Right.
you got like a 20% chance that they're actually gonna put the thing to series.
Yeah.
But I was in February of 2020, and then there's a table read that you do.
Yep.
And the story is always at least one person gets fired at every table read that happens, you know. So we're just waiting this whole week for when is the table read going to happen. And every single day I'm waking up like, okay, it'll be today. And I show up to the studio and they're like, oh no, we're not going to do it today. We'll do it tomorrow. And I'm like, okay.
I want to know.
So then I come in the next day and I'm like ready to go. And they're like, no, we'll wait. We'll do it next day. And it kept getting pushed and pushed and pushed. And on the Thursday that we pushed it, the NBA shut down.
I remember that day very
And so
vividly.
we did the table read on the Friday, and they said, okay, great, everyone keeps their jobs. We're going to go shoot on Monday. We still hadn't cast like 4 of the roles, but we were going to make this thing.
Yeah.
And then we all went to lunch, and we're like, all right, great, this is happening. Our lives are about to change. And then an hour later, they came and told us, you know what, we're going to shut everything down for a few weeks. Just see what happens. And then
Oh my
it was
God.
6 or 8 months later that we shot the pilot, and then a full year later that it became a reality. We got picked up.
So that's a lot to digest because you're working your ass off for 20, 25 years trying to get to that moment of, hey, I finally made it and I'm on this show on CBS and doing my thing that I've always dreamed of. But like working all the way up to that point, how much rejection can a person take, and how do you stay motivated to just keep on grinding and going after so many no's or one-offs or guest star appearances? Like, how do you just keep chugging along?
Well, there was a long period where a guest star would have meant the world to me.
Yeah.
Like I had an 8-year run where I couldn't get a television job. Like I just wasn't doing anything.
Yeah.
And like I would have loved, I would have taken anything, and I couldn't do it. And I think what happens eventually is, well, I'll say this. There is this little like time capsule thing that starts because everyone else you went to school with who wasn't in the arts got a job.
Yep.
And you're kind of you're waiting tables for a little bit. You go to school for a little bit. You're like this vagabond or something in this world as everyone is like moving on with their lives, and you're still kind of stuck at 24 or 23 out of college trying to figure out where your legs are. So that happens. But I do remember the closest I ever came from walking away and saying this is too much was actually after the most successful year of my career up until Ghosts, which was I did a year where I just did theater and it was like back to back jobs, and I worked the whole year. And afterward, at the end, they ended with like me playing the title role in Amadeus, which is this like heavy lift, and it was so much fun. And I thought, okay, I did it. Now, like, things should be different.
Right.
And nothing changed. I had, like, one audition afterwards, and then things went silent. And I was like, all right, I think maybe I should go to grad school. Maybe I should go, like study to be an architect or something, or just, like, give up. And I think eventually what kept me around was I couldn't, whether this is healthy or not, I couldn't acknowledge or label the previous I was 17, so 15, 16, 17 years as a failure.
Yep.
I couldn't just say that I needed something more to show for it. And that moved me towards moving back to New York, where then everything changed for me and got exponentially better.
What was rock bottom? I mean, you had a lot of auditions that didn't get callbacks. You had a lot of years of. You mentioned 8 years. Did I get that right? Is it 8 years of not working?
Yeah, there was 8 years of not working in television.
In television, right?
But for the most part, in those 20 years, I wasn't working much at all. Rock bottom. I mean, that moment after that year, that I got real low after that. I do remember, actually, this was, oh my God. So in addition to this actor having social anxiety, being dyslexic so he can't read scripts, those two death blows to the desire to be an actor, I also had this crazy vocal tension where if I got in a room with people, maybe had a drink, the next day I wouldn't be able to talk. And so the idea of doing a play where after you do one production of it that you may not be able to talk the next day is terrifying. And that is exactly what happened in previews of Amadeus. I had gotten my biggest theater role to that point.
Yeah.
And like by the second or third preview, I had lost my voice. And I was there like, I'm here. I'm here. And now I have to be on steroids. They had to start canceling shows for me to rest and recover. And like that terror, when it's 8 shows a week, you got to find a way to keep going.
Right.
And I think the terror is always like, the universe doesn't want me to do this.
Right.
Like it shouldn't be this hard.
Yep.
Because nothing came easy.
Yeah. Did you were there like those few nights that first week when you had to cancel shows? I mean, were there nights of you toss and turn and thinking, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah. There was so much shame. And that's the thing is like the worst thing in those situations is not necessarily the reality of what's happening, but watching that reality fall over someone's face who previously believed in you. Yeah. Like the director hearing for the first time, our Amadeus can't talk. Like that's the worst thing. And knowing that like, because you take it on. You take on the past rejections and you're like, oh, well, failure has come to this production because I brought it. Yeah. Because that's who I am.
Did you you did the waiting tables? I know that, but you also teaching was a big thing for you. Were you a substitute teacher first and then started doing it? Was it full time?
Yeah. Well, so I was when I was in LA, my like side job, because I couldn't. I needed to do something that as a survival job that was somehow connected to the dream of being an actor.
Right.
And so I thought substitute teaching would be a good thing, and I had this degree that I could use, and so I applied and got, and you take some tests, which was a little scary to take like standardized tests. After, in your late 20s, you're like, oh my God, my 16-year-old self would be ashamed of me. But yeah, so you take these tests and you go, and so I was a substitute teacher, mostly in South Central LA. So you get up every morning at like 4:30, you wait by the phone, and somewhere between like 5 a.m. and 6 a.m., your phone may or may not ring. It usually does. To say that someone's not coming to work today, we need a sub. So you're going to go to a school that you don't know. You don't know where it is. You don't know these students for the most part. You're walking in. It's probably like 20 kids in a class.
Yeah.
And I did elementary school, so it was anything from like first grade to like fifth grade. And basically it's on you to keep these people get through a lesson plan so you have a script.
Right.
And to keep this audience engaged somehow until 2:30 in the afternoon. So it was exhausting.
Yeah, it sounds awful. I mean, I'm not trying to hate on what you did to get.
No. It's
just from the outside, it sounds very difficult.
It was a hard thing to do, but as an actor, it was great because on a day where I had an audition, I just wouldn't pick up the phone, right? So I could have my days off when I needed it. But what it was good at doing was like that social anxiety. That was front and center.
You got to face it.
Yeah, you got to face it. And something about dealing with kids I remember there was a day where I was like, I also had like a ton of acne. Like I just like it was like everything that you shouldn't have as an actor. I had.
Yeah.
And I remember the kids one day like being like, "Why is there red shit all over your face?" And so I was like, "Thank you. This is
Thank you
great.
so much.
This is really good. Help me out here."
I'm gonna go home and cry about this.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So yeah, exactly. So the kids are great but they're actually great because they're so honest. Like
Right.
if something's not funny, they're not gonna laugh.
Right.
So you start to find an ability to relate and communicate, and kind of feel more comfortable in the uncomfortability, and that's what ended up. So then I was doing that, and that became a stepping stone to teaching what I really wanted to teach, which was acting, because the way that auditions turned around for me was I just started helping everyone that I could find with an audition. Like I wasn't, I was just helping, and so. I said this to you before we got on camera, but there's this experience of like what the actor is doing and what people who are holding auditions are looking for.
Yeah.
And to get to A to B is very hard if you're sitting in the position of A or B.
Right.
But if you can step outside of it and see A from 360 degrees and see B from that perspective, suddenly the two are not so far apart.
Right.
And so teaching was integral in me figuring that out. And it's very orienting in a business that is otherwise very disorienting.
So that helped you basically translate
Yeah.
what you needed to do when you go in for an audition, but you were doing it almost subconsciously, helping people that you know try to land parts. Is that right?
Yeah, and I would help people all the time, and they'd be, they'd have these dream careers that like the ones that I would want. And even with my acting coach, like for a long time, I work with this guy Bob Krakauer, who's a wonderful acting coach here in New York, and for a long time I'd be in classes as like the guy who was like the guy that Bob would be like, "Oh, take that person outside and help him out," or something like that. But like I'd be the one with no resume.
Yeah,
it's like I had learned it so long, but for some reason it just wouldn't. When I was auditioning, it wouldn't click.
Right.
Great in class, but when the pressure was on, I'd black out. Whatever it is, I went dead. And it was only through like so much practice and so much examination that eventually I would dissociate.
Yeah.
I would dissociate, and eventually I knew so much, and my body knew so much that the dissociation began to connect. Like it began to fizzle away, and suddenly I became more and more present in what I was doing.
When you get the call for Ghost audition, is it something? Do you have any idea what you were? Did you know you were signing up to be pantsless on national TV?
No, I had no idea. To be completely honest, I had lost all faith in pilots. That I was so focused, and there was a guest star for Blue Bloods.
Yeah. That
I was like, oh, a guest star. I could get a guest star. That's what I really wanted. And my agent was like, "We're going to this audition. You're going to do this Ghost audition." I was like, oh. But when I read it, it was the kind of thing where I think anytime you perform, and this is why the mental health stuff is so important, there's a tightrope that you walk. I've always felt that as an actor, it's somewhere between control and chaos. Yeah. Right? So you can lean into the control, and then fear is just gripping everything. But you need a little bit of that control in order for there to be a story.
Right.
And then there's the chaos of just throwing everything to the wind,
where
suddenly things are just amorphous and don't really happen. But you need the chaos because that's the only thing that only way that anything is alive.
Yeah.
So there's this constant tightrope you're walking. And when I remember reading the Ghost script and being like, this thing is so well written. The tightrope is even finer because I need to stay out of its way. It's going to work.
Yeah.
I can't put a hat on a hat. I can't put too much on it because it's naturally going to work. It's naturally going to flow.
Right.
Just let it be what it is.
After going through so many auditions over, a decade of either rejection or getting small roles or doing not TV jobs, when you walked out of that audition, did you feel like I got this? Or
no, I felt good. I felt good, but the bigger thing was I was an hour late for that audition.
Yikes.
Because I had an audition prior with a casting director who years prior had told my agents when I was in high school, don't ever send him back here. And I remembered, I never forgot that office was like, he's not good. Don't ever send him back here. So this was the first time that guy was seeing me since grad school, since all those years. So all I wanted, and I was so wrong for the part. I was never going to be good.
Right.
But all I wanted was for that guy to see me as different than what he saw me as when I was a kid. So it was that's everything I needed. So I was an hour late for that thing. I was just sitting there keeping my head straight so I can go in and do it. And he did. I mean, I did the audition. He was like, wow, you've grown, and that was all I needed. So at that point, I was like, this day is over.
Yeah,
it's
I won.
Great.
We're good.
Anything else is fine. So
Yeah.
I wasn't even thinking about ghosts because the only thing I needed was to get that demon out of my head. So, he wasn't a demon, but the memory. He was lovely. It wasn't. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure he was lovely. But it is like when you're in such a subjective, judgmental, critiquing business, like, and I think for people who are listening that either want to get in journalism or get in acting, theater, whatever it is, like, you have to know people are going to, I don't know if like talking shit or critiquing you is the right way to put it, but it is kind of what happens. You have to have thick skin. And I think the world's changed in the most part with people being more polite and trying to be conscious of people's mental health. But these businesses, at least I can speak on the sports journalism side, it hasn't really changed that much, where you still have to be like, is it the same way in acting where it's the same grind of getting judged, critiqued constantly? And
yeah, it's funny, like those years when I was not working, I kept telling myself this story that it's me. There's something wrong with me, right? There were like me and the business don't mix. There's something about me or my relationship with the business, and that's not true. The hard reality is that no one cares, and every job is different. Let me say this better. It always felt like, the business hated me, and that's what I wanted it to be.
yeah,
Because if they hate me, if they don't like me, then I have a relationship with them. It's antagonistic, but I have a relationship. If it's just that I'm just not all that interesting and no one's really drawn to me, it means that I'm just erased. I don't even exist. So like I would almost prefer that they all hated me.
just so you'd be on the radar.
Just so I'd have a relationship. Just so I would exist in their eyes. But for the most part, I was just invisible. And that's the hard thing, is that it's not like that one day of feedback or like, and I would have with agents. I had a play that I did. We did it twice. And on the opening nights of both of those productions, my agent fired me. Like just dropped me. Like I saw the play, not interested. We're not working together anymore. And so that kind of thing is different because that person knows you. They're like that hurts because they rejected you and they
right.
Betray is not the right word, but they abandoned you.
Yeah.
The casting things hurt because you feel like you just don't exist, and if you put all your eggs in this basket,
right,
you cannot not take that personally. Like you can have all the therapy you want, but your body is still going to feel the feelings of feeling like you don't deserve to take up space.
You mentioned therapy, so I want to hop into that. You started therapy at a younger age?
I started therapy in college because I had a really magnificent acting coach named Larry Moss who told me, you need to get into therapy. All my wires were crossed and I was set up to be in trouble. And I listened to him. And the truth is, I didn't find a good therapist. I was probably 21, 22 when I started. And things didn't work for me. I finally found a good therapist who was I found a lot of unhealthy therapists.
Yep.
Therapists who would like emotionally abuse me because I wouldn't, would say you're not doing this, you're sabotaging this, and would get in your face, and it's like, Jesus. And part of me, the tenacity would say no, I can take it, I can take more, this is good for me, right?
Like tough love almost.
Yeah, because you always think, oh, I'm not tough enough, let me keep going. But eventually I found a really good therapist when I was in LA through a friend of mine, Dawn Cantwell, her therapist. And then when I got back to New York after the pandemic, I found some really great therapists. And this is the first time in my life that I feel like I'm in really good hands. But it took that long.
Right. And I think a good point is too, I knew I was depressed or had mental health issues when I was 14. That was the first time I had thought about suicide. And it took me all the way until the pandemic to reach out and to go see a therapist. And luckily mine, knocked out of the park right away.
That's incredible.
Two complete opposites. She isn't, hopefully she doesn't watch this and get mad at me for describing her like this, but she's an older woman that's not into sports, had no idea who I am, doesn't care about the Bengals or any teams I report on. So it was like so perfect because it gives you like a completely objective point of view on how to address your issues. What was the thing that these therapists that you finally, after shopping around, liked? What did they do best that helped you with your mental health and move on?
It wasn't about my head. It wasn't about talking about or analyzing things. It was about my body. It was about feeling the sensations in my body. Because I would always, I had acting coaches at a young age who were, I think, put me in very unhealthy situations.
Yeah.
And my body just would hold on to these things. So it's like your feelings, your memories, stuff like that, at least this was my experience, your brain would have these thoughts, but it's usually motivated by something that's kind of held physically is the wrong word, but you know what I mean. I'm trying to say big words. And I think that was the big turning point for me, where suddenly the benefit of having a little bit of quiet and taking a little bit of space for myself suddenly existed, as opposed to approaching everything with my head, where I had to solve the problem that was me. And that was really hard, because I would kind of go through the same cycle, and you can't really solve your emotions with your head, or at least I've found this.
Yeah, no, I
got a pretty quick head, and he jumps in, to solve problems immediately, and so I have to take him out of the equation.
Yeah, I'm totally laughing and being sophomore during this conversation.
No, you're being great.
It's no, but the thing is once you like realize what works for you, it helps you move on in a different direction. And I think with your career and mental health, like whatever you believe in, God or whatever, is putting you in that direction, it feels like they sync up at the same time. Like when you're going through shit, you're really going through shit.
Yeah.
And when you're feeling like things are turning in the right direction, it's both mental health, like you said, therapy, and then you get this job as Trevor on Ghost, and this is a life-changing role for you, isn't it?
Oh yeah. It's funny. I won't name names, but there was someone I had dinner with early on when I got this show, and they were like, this is a dumb show. I don't give a shit about this show. Like, it's just dumb, and it really just like flattened and destroyed my whole journey has been to get here, right? To overcome all these things to get here. There are people for whom I suppose there are people for whom this is very easy. Like I guess you can get a ton of shows in your life and everything just comes to you.
Yeah.
But this for me, just having a job as an actor and being part of something, and even the bigger thing, which is you make a thing that people like.
Yeah.
That at the end of the day, that's everything.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that changes the reality of your life. Like I mean, this is one of the weirdest things about me is I'm a Jaguars fan, and now I have a relationship with the team because of this show. Right?
That's amazing.
There's really no other way that I've cashed in like this show outside of that, because it's really all I wanted. But there's that. But then there's also the things that are, I think, more important, which is a little bit of a level of confidence in knowing that you get to take up some space. Mm-hmm. And prior to this, the only place where I felt that was in a classroom, where I was educating people who were trying to come into this business and trying to figure out how it worked. And because I had failed so much, and they were asking questions, I knew some answers to those questions.
Yeah.
But aside from that, feeling like you have two legs to stand on and you have something to say, and you can make a difference is, that's a huge, huge thing for your head and your heart.
It's proving yourself right, and that all this hard work of years and years teaching, waiting tables, struggling, waiting for this moment, it pays off. And for you had always wanted to do more serious roles, and this, at least that's what I thought. And
when I was in college, there was a phrase that my friends would use called an Asher joke, and that's the jokes that would fail. Those were the jokes that would follow with silence. So no part of me was ever like, oh, I'll do a comedy. That sounded like the dumbest thing I could ever possibly. That sounded like taking the insurmountable goal or obstacle of being an actor and making it even harder just for fun.
Yeah.
So no part of me was looking for that. It was always the drama, and I think in many ways this is probably unhealthy for a lot of it. Acting was a way to try to understand how I was feeling all the time and the dark feelings that I was feeling all the time. Yeah, there are people now who look back who were casting people who knew me back then. They were like, you know what, it was always going to be comedy for you. And I'm like,
That's
well,
crazy.
No one told me that. I didn't
Yeah,
know.
well, I mean, obviously it worked out, and it's proven to be a great role for you.
I do want to say, just because you said it earlier, I think that I've probably had 2 moments in my life where I've always had a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety, stuff like that. There are probably 2 moments in my life where I really contemplate. I felt like I was the suicidal impulse was strong enough that it was like it took the mic for a second. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
One of them was living in LA, and it was just nothing happening. That was one, but the other one was actually after season 1.
Really?
Yeah, because I think that getting done with season 1 and kind of the duality between how the show, what the show was and what this new life was, juxtaposed with how I had felt internally all those years, almost couldn't coexist. And so one of them was like, this isn't work. We're not going to make it. We're getting too close to the sun. It's not going to,
Yeah.
And so it was just this overwhelming fear. And now, and you work in therapy, you do stuff, and now it feels so much different. But like, I would perseverate over any little thing, or just people being seen or stuff like that. And now I've worked and got a lot better at it. But it was interesting to me that it was after my biggest success that was the moment where I got darkest.
Yeah, and I want to, if I can,
please,
dig into that a little bit, because for me, like, I don't know. I worked hard, but I got lucky where I got back to a big job at 25, like covering my hometown team, reporting on the Bengals. It was awesome, but like I was single, had always felt alone, dealt with depression, suicidal thoughts since I was 14. I would be like walking home drunk and be like, all right, what if I just jump off the bridge? What's going to happen? Or like I had to call my cousin one time because I was laying down in traffic outside of a casino. Like, oh my God. Like, do you specifically remember nights of, I don't know if you're a big drinker like I used to be, where you were super drunk and had these thoughts of like, all right, it's just not going to happen. What, does it even matter? Like,
yeah, those were the moments. So it wasn't, funnily enough, neither of them were around nights, but there were moments of like feeling like a raft, like you're on this raft in the ocean.
Right.
And it's like, there's no land anywhere near us. So it's like, what's really the difference?
Right.
That I think you'd have that kind of thought. When the one happened in LA, I immediately called my friend Phil, and so like, there was a protective impulse in me that was like, now we're too close.
Yeah.
Now we gotta, and just talking to a friend helped. For the other one, it was a similar thing where I caught myself where it was. The impulse, it was almost like the impulse had the mic for, just to continue with that metaphor, had the mic for so long that another part of me got scared and then got really angry and was like, I don't know what the PG ratings are, but was like, fuck you, And I went to therapy and my therapist gave me like a baseball bat and I like hit a pillow for a while and tears just started shooting out of me.
Yeah.
But I got so angry at this part of me that I think on some level was saying I was such a failure and that if I didn't succeed, it wasn't worth, I didn't deserve the life.
Yeah.
Because I had fallen so low under expectations, or if I hadn't, I was about to. But yeah, I remember viscerally the feeling of like that argument, that part of me was suddenly getting the stage so much that another part of me got so angry.
Right. Was that in LA or is that after season
here?
1?
I was sitting on this floor over here, laying down on the floor.
After your first season shot.
After
season 1.
You got
the biggest job that you've ever
It was, honestly, it was probably almost a year ago to maybe like this week or next week, or right around that point. Yeah.
And what made you snap out of it? I mean, like that, you talking about going to therapy. I have the visual, because I'm a very visual person, of you bawling, hitting a pillow with a baseball bat, of like, because I've been there. I mean, like, people that haven't been in those spaces don't understand. People that are listening or watching that have, they do, of like, why the fuck do I feel like this?
Yeah.
Yes. It's, you can't answer the question. Like, you have.
Well, it's also a feeling because feelings aren't, first of all, they're not facts, so they're not rational.
Right.
But they have a real, like, if you are in a position where you're not sure what's real, what's true, if you're in the right path, if you're doing the right thing, a feeling, you never really question the reality or the truth of a feeling.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So the feeling shows up and says, well, this is real. And so whether it's based on a reality or not is irrelevant. It just, in its very essence of affecting how you feel.
Right.
It is real. So it's you have to almost have that. Luckily for me, my brain caught me the first time, and for the second time, I'd like to think that it was another feeling that popped up, like self-parts type thing that was like, fuck this guy. No, this guy doesn't deserve the microphone anymore. Now, I think also a lot in therapy, I would have therapists, I'd have acting coaches who would say, Larry Moss would say this to me, treat yourself like you are your own son. And so that language had gotten like embedded in my head. And I think on some level, when that voice got big enough, the part of me that got mad was the part that was like, leave the fucking kid alone.
Right.
You know, and was like, I worked too hard for us to not be here.
Right. Go
I
do
think
this.
that was, yeah.
And I think for me, one of the biggest things I try to preach to people is that, and I'm not a therapist, not a doctor, not a mental health professional, but those feelings are just temporary. Like that's the crazy part for me, is I look back at where I can't believe that's where I was sleeping till 2, like as late as I wanted to go into the studio or go to practice, whatever it was. And then like, I just can't believe I was at that spot where I was suicidal every single day. You mentioned about being a year ago, having that moment on this floor in your apartment. I checked into a mental health hospital last April. So like literally a year. And it's just crazy to look back on those moments and see how you can grow yourself.
Yeah, and what you just said, yeah, this is, and they're cyclical. Like, it's not that they won't ever come back,
right?
But when they come back, if you take the space to work on yourself, suddenly you start to see them 360, right?
Yes.
So it's like, it doesn't overwhelm you. You're like, oh, there you are again.
Yeah, it's not that.
This is not our first date. I've met you before. I know how you work.
Right.
And I may feel you right now, but I can also feel my leg, and my leg is not feeling you right now. Or I can also feel like my whole body is not in the part of me that I'm feeling this thing. There's more than just the feeling when it shows up.
Well, I'm happy that both of us, figure those out, weather those storms, and are in good spots. And I know we talk a lot about mental health and dark places, but I wanted to get into some fun things with the show. Trevor on Ghost, no pants. When did that, did you know that as soon as you got the script? How weird is that to be on a set without pants? Like, for everyone that's just listening, he does have pants on the YouTube version of this.
I do.
It's weird questions. I'm sure you get it a lot now.
I do get it a lot. It's I kind of feel like I disappoint the question every time because I've just gotten used to it. When I first got the script, I was relieved because I was like,
that you had no pants on?
Yeah, because I had never done a comedy before. So I was like,
okay. I thought you thought this was like an adult film or something. No. Okay, great. I'm in this. This is perfect.
No, I was relieved because I thought if I lay an Asher joke and mess the whole thing up, at least I don't have
pants on.
At least they can pull to a wide shot and I won't drown everyone with my failure. So that was the first thought, but there was definitely a moment when, after being isolated because of the pandemic for 6-7 months, whatever it was, and in the back of my head, I just knew when we shot that pilot, I was like, I guarantee you, the first thing we shoot at like 5 a.m. Monday morning will be the Tara Reid monologue in front of a bunch of strangers, and I'll have no pants on. And then suddenly I was walking around my apartment or the hotel room trying to get used to the thing. And flash forward to a year and like 6 months ago, we had an event. It was for Comic-Con in New York. I had to go buy a pair of pants, and I went into the store and found a pair of pants and took off mine, just tried them on in the middle of the store. And someone was like, do you want a dressing room? And it just like I've just gotten so comfortable that the question should go to the cast, who's now, seen me without my pants on for so much that they may need to get into therapy.
Do you guys shoot in LA?
No, Montreal.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. What's that like? Because that's not. I mean, there's you walking around with no pants in LA. I mean, there's way crazier things happening.
That's right. Yeah.
Around
New York too is a lot crazier. It's funny. A lot of people in the cast would really love to move to LA, and I want them to be happy, so I'm happy wherever we move. But there is something really nice for me about this dream comes true. And not only is it going to be this whole new experience, but it's taking me to a new place.
Yeah.
And so there's a new world that I kind of get to experience, and that's kind of fun.
Yeah.
I think it's a great city. I really enjoyed Montreal, and they get all the seasons. So in the summer, I have bugs attacking my legs, and in the winter, I have the cold. So,
is it cool, different, like not being in LA or New York shooting that because you think your whole life it's going to be, or is it exciting to be something new?
No, I think it's exciting to be something new. I mean, I won't lie. If we suddenly moved to Newark or New York, and there's some new studios opening up in Newark, if that suddenly happened, I'd be over the moon. I would be so happy. Because half my life, we shoot 6-7 months out of the year, so half my life I'm living in Montreal. But I'm also saying that from the standpoint of having done it, having lived somewhere else. And because I think the other thing that happens with this business is that you spend so much time waiting that you actually end up, it's different now because now everyone can audition virtually or with self-tapes and everything. But there were so many years that I could have gone away and seen the world, and I didn't. Because I was like, I need to be available. And the business didn't want me to be available.
Right.
So the fact that the show brings with it a new location I think is a fun thing.
And I just got a few more questions.
Please.
To people like listening, if you haven't moved away, no matter what your profession is or what you're studying, I think it is because people that are from certain cities, Cincinnati's one of them, but a lot of people don't leave where they're from and stay put. And I think you can learn a lot about yourself, the world, obviously, different jobs, careers. I suggest, even if you just do it for a year, go move somewhere else, different city, different state, different country, whatever you want to do. You learn a lot about you.
Yes. I think a big regret for me was not going away, not studying abroad in college or just spending a big chunk of time away. And I still have this pipe dream that I'm going to go and go to backpacking through Europe for a year or something. But yeah, and the other thing, what it is, and this is just from a mental health standpoint, anything that I don't know about, I usually relate to with fear. And then just having the experience of not knowing a thing, having judgments about it, going to that new world, realizing that it's different than what you thought.
Yeah.
Once you do it one time, you can kind of extrapolate from there.
Right.
But doing it that one time, it's like you don't even know what you're afraid of until you see it.
Yeah.
And you realize that you're not afraid.
Yeah. And then you experience it and you're like, okay, I'm comfortable here.
Yeah.
Have you got comfortable with the new level of fame and attention and what it's been like? I mean, it's obviously good being successful on the show.
Yes.
But like seeing, I saw you on CBS this morning, doing interviews like that or premieres, or have you had any crazy Hollywood experiences of like, it's just like, it's cool, like it's different.
Yeah, thus far it's all cool. I also live in New York.
Yeah.
Where like I grew up and every actor who wanted to be an actor worshipped the ground that Philip Seymour Hoffman walked on. Yeah. And I would see him all the time in New York just walking around, and occasionally I'd say something, but I would never go up to him and be like, "Oh my God, hi, I love you so much." Like it would be a thing that would happen naturally. Like New Yorkers, I feel for the most part are not like, "Oh my God, I have to pull you aside and da-da-da." Like you're in New York, maybe that shit happens in LA, but here in New York, everyone's just getting.
So, hey, get the fuck out of the way. I gotta get on the bus, or I gotta get in this store.
but to that so all not that I wouldn't appreciate someone telling me that they love the work or they love the show. I would, and it was always fun. Like I haven't had an experience like that wasn't fun and enjoyable, or at the very least felt good. Just to say that like I haven't in the city of New York ever felt like, oh my God, I really need more privacy right now. That said, the coolest thing, like the things that are the most fun, and I've now spent more and more time in Jacksonville, is like people coming up to me, especially if it's like during a game or something like that, be like, hey, can you FaceTime with my mom? And say hi. Like that stuff's so cool because what it says to me is that this is the kind of thing that like people watch with their families.
Yes.
And that's very cool to me because anything that can bring people together like that, usually, everyone has their own show.
Yeah.
They separate. Like I was a big Scrubs fan, and I haven't watched network TV since. But I would go watch it alone. Like no one else in my family wanted to watch it with me.
Interesting.
On Tuesday nights. And so the idea that I'm part of something that people are like,
brings them together.
Oh yeah, we save it until we're all together to watch. Like I think that's very cool.
Very special. And
Yeah.
you mentioned Jacksonville, so let's get into the Jags real quick. I'm a Bengals fan. We've had our fair share of tough years, and
I grew up with a Bengals fan until he abandoned ship. My brother.
So your dad was a Lions fan.
Yeah,
and
is a Lions fan.
Is a Lions fan.
Actually, he's in Detroit today. He's going to opening day of the Tigers, or not opening day. He's going to it's already open, but he's seeing the Tigers and Mets play.
Oh, that's sweet. That's awesome. But you and your brother, so he was Lions fan. You and your brother had the opportunity to choose teams. He chose.
I don't know if it was the opportunity. I think we were forced to leave.
Yeah.
For our own futures.
So what?
Yeah, my guy's here.
Yeah. What happened with Jacksonville? Why'd you pick the Jags?
So yeah, the story is that my mom was getting a little concerned that we were raised as Lions fans, and I think she was already seeing the social anxiety and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think she went to my dad and was like, "Your kids,
Don't put them through this.
your kids are not going to have friends because they're Lions fans. They will be alone." And my dad, I guess, got scared, and he was like, "Oh, maybe you're right, God." And so he sat us down and was like, "Maybe you guys should pick your own teams. You can't be Lions fans." But he was also like, "But don't be a Giants or Jets fan. Like, be your own person." And that was 1995, so I chose them from the beginning. And but there was we were 8 and 6, so like of course I became a Jaguars fan. He became a Bengals. Like we stayed in like this animal big cat thing.
Yeah.
And then my brother was Bengals, and then with the Dolphins, and then Bengals, and now he's back home with the Lions with my dad.
Interesting. So, but you have to do some really, really cool things.
Yeah.
I will make sure this comes out after this happens.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Thank you.
So, you getting to be involved with the Jaguars schedule release.
Yeah.
Like it's like almost like a short film, right?
Well, what we've done is definitely a short film. Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible. Talk about that because I think by now you can go see it on the Jags social media pages, but like it's such a cool experience for you as a Jags fan. Obviously, getting this role and being a famous Jacksonville fan now, it helps you get to do cool things like this.
That's true. The idea of the association of me with the word famous is always laughable, but I appreciate what you're getting at. There isn't. I don't. My life hasn't. My day-to-day of my life hasn't changed. With doing the show, aside from them shooting the show, and like the social media-ness of it all. But I have certainly cashed in with the Jaguars because that's all I want. Like, if you're on all you want. All I think if you're a sports fan is just to be closer to the sport. That's all you want. There's nothing else. There's no other perk that's as fun as that. So they have welcomed me into the family. And so this year, they every year teams do the schedule release videos. At least the teams that want to partake in the fun competition.
Fun on social media.
Yeah. And so the Jaguars haven't really done one since their last winning season. And so this year they felt like, let's get back into the back on the field, so to speak. And they had an idea based on the Arian Foster thing about the NFL being scripted and said, what if we did a whole thing where we held auditions for the 2023 season? And I was like, okay, that's funny. But I sat and thought about it, and I was like, I think the thing to do is to bring audiences, if you want to go with the scripted idea, bring audiences inside the Jacksonville Jaguars writer's room as they write the 2023 season. And then you can extrapolate that and bring them into rehearsals.
That's incredible.
With the players. So the idea being that there's no more difficult transition in sports than to go from playing football in college to pretending to play football in the NFL, as all these athletes have to learn how to act. So we would put up like things on the screen in their team meeting room. We had access to all these places, and so I got in the team meeting room, and where Doug Peterson usually has his stuff. I put up a big slide that said, "Football is easy, acting is hard," and football got you here, but acting will keep you here. So
that's incredible. So are you directing and?
So I wrote it. I'm in it because you need. What we realized was you need someone to kind of drive be the kind of glue to
tell the story.
Yeah, and like these guys are in OTAs. Like they don't have time to.
Yeah.
Give me 24/7 for a few days of production. So
right.
I'm kind of the glue of it. Bringing the different pieces together, and then I co-directed it with a guy, Trent O'Donnell, who directed the pilot of Ghosts and the first.
Sweet.
He's probably done maybe 10 episodes of the stuff that we've done, and he's a genius. Yeah. And I convinced Trent. He was in Australia. I convinced Trent to fly from Australia to Jacksonville. And I said, there's no budget for this, but if you come and you bring your 10-year-old son, I promise he will have the 2 greatest days of his life. Yeah. And Henry had a blast. He met all the players. He met Trevor. He met, it was great. And so everyone's in it. We have former players. We have current players. Shad Khan's in it. The owner, Doug Peterson, is in it. It's a really fun
Trevor
thing.
Lawrence and you got super close in this, right?
I don't know that we got super close. I've been lucky enough to hang out with him a few times. He's a very cool dude.
Yeah.
And we met at the Super Bowl, I think, at a Super Bowl party. And he's very with it. Like I must have recognized me from. I don't know that he watches Ghosts, or if he hasn't told me. But I'm assuming he saw it on Jaguars social media or something. Right. So we chatted then, and then I met him at the Players Championship in Jacksonville, and then we did this, and I, of course, wanted him to be in it, and he said yes, and then we had a bit where we have a scene where Trevor is kind of peeking into the writers' room, and there's a very strict in our bit that actors are not allowed in the writers' room, and he is nothing more than an actor. Playing the character of Trevor Lawrence. He is Trevor Lawrence playing the character of Trevor Lawrence. So I see him in the doorway, and I'm like, "Hey, bud, how you doing?" And I slam the door in his face and kick him out. And so that was funny. It was good. And Trent was like, "I think try it again, but let's get the door to slam faster." So I did that, slammed it faster. It's a little better. I opened the door to check on Trevor, and he's gone. He's not there. Yikes. And I peek my head out into the hallway, and his face is bright red because I had slammed the door into his nose. And in that moment, my whole life flashed before my eyes, and I thought, "Oh
well,
God,
this is done.
This is done. I'll have to go back to be a Lions fan now because the Jaguars will never talk to me again." No, but yeah, we had a lot of fun, and he was great. He's really funny in this, and he's got the big punchline at the end. Everyone was great. It was really mind blowing. Like you talk about like getting people from a different point of view. Like these guys are guys. Yeah. Like Zay Jones is a wide receiver for the Jaguars. It was with the Raiders. This man should be an actor. Like, he's so good. He and I did a 4-minute improv of him basically having an existential crisis over the fact that he's Zay Jones playing Zay Jones, and if that's true, then who is he? Like we just awesome. Discovered it on the spot, and so all these guys, their personalities and getting to see them as human beings, I think I hope is something that fans are gonna love.
Yeah, no, and you can go look on the Jaguar social media pages. A fun video. Obviously, you love to be a part of it. Last thing I'll ask.
Please.
Second to last. Sorry, I tricked you.
Come get it.
Favorite part of being a Jags fan? Have you had a favorite moment? Was it filming this?
Yeah, it would. Oh God, there have been some games that are amazing. Like the run last year was incredible. Comeback was insane. But yeah, I think probably filming this is one of them, and everything, like hopping on Zoom. I had to film Shad Khan while I was in LA doing press, and hopping on Zoom with him and watching this guy who's like, I guess one of those powerful people around, and he's like, "I'm gonna act today. We're gonna do some acting." Like, that's just so cool, and knowing that like the merging of the acting and the football world is a lot of fun. But yeah, I anything with the Jaguars immediately brings me back to being 8 years old. And from a mental health standpoint, that's a very safe place to be.
That's super cool. And sports are a big thing for me, obviously for you too. And it makes you feel at home, makes you feel like a kid again.
Yeah.
It's super cool. Last thing I will ask, this is the last thing.
Great, please.
Advice for aspiring actors. Actors. I don't know why I said it like that. I'm tired. Advice for aspiring actors who want to follow your footsteps, who maybe have been living in New York and have experienced that same rejection. What advice do you have for them to keep going?
I'm gonna say a couple things, and I hope I'm not long-winded here. One is, I have to repeat this because this is just a good thing, is treat yourself like you are your own son.
Right.
That's huge, because no one else is. We think that we have to earn. We think that and I have learned that. I think I was taught this at some points, that we have to earn well-being.
Okay.
We don't.
Yeah.
We need well-being in order to earn things.
Yep.
So there's that. The other thing is that when I was talking about that chaos and structure thing, a lot of people can do structure. A lot of people can figure out that structure. But allowing yourself to be spontaneous is probably the most important thing you can do as an actor. Because if you go in and have an audition and actually treat it like it's a conversation between you and the reader, whoever, and let life just happen as though it's being improvised, let this thing that's been premeditated, this script, suddenly feel like it's just happening in the room because it's actually just a conversation between you and this other person, your work is going to change dramatically, and opportunities will open up, because eventually you will find through spontaneity what your own sensibilities are. Yeah. And then your sensibilities will meet up with how other people view you. So like for me, what I realized is, when I'm having a lot of fun, if you put douchey words into me having a lot of fun, it comes off as this like lovable douche thing. And that's basically what Trevor is. And so I found out later on, like I never wear suits ever, but I found out as I got older that every job I get, I'm wearing a suit, because there's something about that kind of world that I fit, that my jokey sensibility fits into. So spontaneity, well-being, those are the big ones.
Just don't give up on the dream.
And don't give up. Like, just take care of yourselves is the biggest thing. And, you know, this is the hardest thing, but it used to be that people would have to sell their souls to get access to a camera. Now we all have them in our back pocket. So,
which is good.
Good and bad.
Yeah, TikTok, there's a lot on there. We won't get into all that. Good. I appreciate it, man. Thanks
You're
for having
fantastic.
me.
Thank you for doing this. I think that I wish that I had had access to this kind of stuff when I was a kid, because there was no, even when I see NFL players doing DJ Chark was a receiver for the Jaguars for a while and did a lot with mental health awareness.
Yeah. So I actually know him really well. I covered him at LSU. So
oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. So DJ, like, I've never met him, but everything he did, I was like, my God, if only I could have heard this when I was 14. Yep. Like, it would have changed everything.
And that, I thank you for saying that. That's the hope with this. You know, I'm busting my ass going all around the country, driving 10 hours to New York City and going out to LA and Chicago, everywhere in between. I just think these conversations are what younger people or whoever needs to hear when they're going through shit.
Yeah.
So once again, I appreciate it.
You're
Thank
fantastic.
you so much.
Thank you.
You are as well. And we'll see everybody back here next week on The Mental Game. And what a great conversation that was with Asher. I can't thank him enough for really opening up about mental health, suicidal thoughts, depression. I mean, that was a really, really deep conversation that went just about an hour. And like I said, I can't thank him enough, because opening up like that takes a lot of strength. And I really appreciate him for doing that right here on The Mental Game. Next week, it is another surprise guest, but I will give you 2 hints. I shot the episode last week in Nashville at CMA Fest, and this guest is a former winner. Yes, I said winner on The Voice. So those are your 2 hints, and we will see everybody back here next week on The Mental Game.